everyone, I'm Leslie Cornwell, Certified Nurse Midwife with Empowering Midwifery Education. This section has to do with business tips for independent contractors. A legal disclaimer we put at the beginning of all of our presentations. This information is for general and educational use only, not intended as substitute for professional, legal, or clinical advice. We strive to keep our information as accurate and timely as possible, but make no promises and guarantees it works for your unique situation. Course objectives. The students will be able to verbalize the pros and cons of exactly being a contractor. What does it look like to be an independent contractor? What are the various scopes of work? The elements that are included in an agreement that are really important to have. Some tax considerations with independent contractors, the common deductions with taxes, and the 6 tips for being a successful independent contractor. So why is this topic important? It's really important because there's so many midwives and birth workers that are independent contractors. If you're a nurse midwife, work in the hospital, you're W-2, that's great, that's awesome. But there's many nurse midwives do locum assignments. There's many midwives that do start businesses, doulas, birth workers, birth assistants, childbirth educators. Even if you own a business, you tend to prefer to hire hire 1099 over W-2 staff because of the win-win situation it creates. It's a little more autonomy. Your birth assistants tend to be 1099s. Your other midwives, it's more often than not, they're also 1099 because they get to make their own mini business within your business. So 1099 is a very common discussion in the birth world, and I really want to make sure midwives understand on both directions, whether you're hiring an independent contractor or you choose to become an independent contractor, the pros and cons to it. So you want to make sure you protect everybody. You're writing off the things you can write off. You're doing the proper tax things. You're paying them the right way. You're protecting your business. The person that's independent contractor knows the risk and benefits of choosing this working status relationship. So the pros of being an independent contractor include simple. You get to be your own mini boss. You are a solo business under your social security number if you're an S corp or a sole proprietorship, or under your EIN number if you're an LLC. You are the one that gets to determine the hours you work, how you work, what you get to work, what you get paid. You have no bosses, you have no supervisors. You're being contracted out to other companies, other services based on your skill set. You're freelancing, you do it here and there. You may have a more ongoing relationship with multiple people. If you do marketing services, if you do fill in for midwives here and there, you do locum coverage, you do office visit here and there, childbirth education, breastfeeding support. But it's also a catch-22. Like, you have to be more of an initiative person because you don't have a boss. You don't have to clock in. You are more accountable for your day-to-day operations than someone that's W-2. Greater control over the work you accept. You get to decide how you work, when you work, who you get to accept to work with. You get a significant degree of control of your product, your scope of work, your service line, of what you're going to provide to someone for short-term or long-term relationship. You typically get to earn more money. It's a very interesting concept. Yes, you have to pay a little more in taxes. Yes, you have a little extra things you have to worry about compared to a W-2, but you get so much to write off from your day-to-day operation. Your cell phone, part of your house is an office, your computer, your printer, your office supplies, things you may or may not already pay for on your own with a W-2 after earned income tax. So you get to tend to earn more money. A contractor, so for example, a midwife is hired on a private practice, they get an average $50 an hour. If they get benefits, if they're W-2, you're providing their insurance, their retirement, workman's comp, disability, etc., etc. If someone's 1099, they're an independent contractor, they have to cover all their benefits. They are responsible. You can be fired in a dime overnight. It's a contract, it's a working relationship. There's no discrimination protection for you, but you also make more money. On average, someone that makes $50 for a W-2 position tends to make $70 to $90 for a contract. They're filling in a need. They tend to be temporary. They really chose you because of your expertise and skill sets versus just anybody. So like my consulting work, when I do locum coverage, when I create proposals and packages for scope of work services within my company, I'm being contracted to them as an independent service line. So there's many tax benefits to being a business owner, to be a 1099 that a W-2 person doesn't get to do. I used to look into some nursing contracts for labor and delivery because they were quite profitable. A lot were out there, but they pretty much all put you as a W-2 employee, and I didn't want to be a W-2 employee. I had my own insurance with my company. I had my own benefits with my company. I wanted a side hustle that paid me. I don't want to double dip into benefits that I don't need. I want them to pay me as a 1099 so I can utilize and get the max payment directly from them because they don't have to pay me all these benefits. I don't need them. I don't want them. So many providers, physicians, nurse midwives that do independent contracts with these agencies are typically 1099 versus W-2. So that's another nice perk when you switch over to the practitioner versus the nursing realm. So these are some of the downfalls of being an independent contractor, and it's always interesting to me because it's a very subjective thing. Like, to me, it's not a downfall, it's just a different way of doing things, but you must withhold your own taxes. If you've always worked for a big corporation, you've always been W-2, and you're switching over to an independent contractor, you're used to getting your paycheck in your hand with the taxes out of it. If you're not used to holding money to the side, having your due diligence, putting your own tax money and paying it quarterly, you're going to be really surprised when you meet with your accountant at the end of the year and you owe a ton of money because you think what is put in your bank account is yours and you haven't taken the taxes out. And so it's not so much, I'd say, a con thing, it's just a different way of doing it. We have to withhold our own federal, state, local taxes from the money we're being paid. And that's why you work closely with an accountant, you estimate appropriately, you save in an extra, like I just have it as an auto transfer to an additional account just to keep a good pool of funds in a combination of an emergency account and a combination of a tax account. You have to pay for your own benefits. I mean, these are goods and bads. If they're paying you more, you got to compensate and quote. That's why it is more expensive to get an independent contractor than someone employed because they've got to pay for their own stuff that the W-2 staff would have gotten from you. So there's goods and bads to that. I like picking my own benefits. I get to pick what insurance plan I want to go to. I get to choose what retirement accounts, investing strategy I want that isn't as flexible when you work for somebody else. So, I mean, it's interesting the perceptions of pros and cons, but it's a different shift. You have to be accountable for your own benefits. There isn't a boss out there that's going to provide you disability, provide you life insurance, provide you retirement planning support and matching programs. You have to set that up for yourself. So it's a very different level of independence, but you're a mini business, so you should be thinking like a mini business. You must have your own equipment, tools. If you're going to help out a midwife at a birth, if you're independent contracting, typically you use your own supplies, you use your own equipment, you go and help them out because this is part of the package of the scope of work you did. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. When I do my locum assignments, they're literally scope of work is me. They have the equipment, they have the tools. I'm going on site, I'm utilizing their resources. So it really just depends, but typically at 1099, they expect you, depending on the skill. I mean, if you're a plumber, they're going to expect you to bring the tools and the things you need to fix the problem, not that the person that's contracting you is going to have those available. So it really just depends on the industry. But when you're running a mini business, you have to, if you're offering to do a marketing proposal to somebody, you've got to have the tools to be successful to complete what's on the scope of work. If you don't list, you need to buy this program for me and this for me, they expect you to have it to be able to complete the scope of work proposal you gave them. You may need to have a federal and state tax ID number. If you're doing it under sole proprietorship, which is your social security number, I don't encourage people to do that. I really encourage you to at least start out with a limited liability company. We talk about it in other sections, for protection, for tax savings. You're a mini business. Act like a mini business. You're not on Etsy. You're not selling eggs. You're not doing a little side sewing hobby. You are a formal professional in the community. If you want to be more likely taken seriously, scope of work proposals to go through more often, you really should be getting that federal and state tax ID numbers to represent your 1099, whether it's your business, whether it's you doing it as a single member LLC, but you really should be getting all those things legit to get you to that level. So the independent scope of work, it can be a wide variety of things. There is no rules to this. You get to decide, I'm bringing to the table my skills, I'm bringing to this table my knowledge, I'm bringing to the table, I can offer you 2 hours of work a week, or I will complete a project by 10 days for you. You get to determine the timeline. Are you going to get paid based on time, or are you going to get paid based on value? I love contracts that are scope of work based on value because I make way more money. I have worked really, really hard to learn everything I've learned. My time is too precious. If I broke it down by hourly, it gets very expensive for people. But if I can put together a system and a team, and I can say, look, we'll create this for you, we'll create these packages, these proposals, with this presentation, I am putting a proposal together as an independent contractor representing my company, but I'm not the one directly doing the service line. I am the one putting my team together, being the leader of the project management, and helping to get whatever we agreed upon. So if it's website, if it's a CABC accreditation, if it's training staff, doing some team building projects, creating a presentation for them to do some trainings, like whatever scope you're doing. And we're used to as midwives with the scope of work would be a birth assistant, and then they have to be very detailed. I'm on call, and a lot of times you just pay them a flat rate. You give them $200, $300, $400, whether they make it for the birth or they're there for a really long time, because we don't know in the world of birth how, if you pay them hourly, they're not going to be too happy with you when they stayed available, committed, and a bunch of ladies in a row, they were only there an hour and a half, 2 hours because they went really fast. Or you're going to be on the other side of vulnerability. If you have a bunch of first-time moms, really long labors, your birth assistant's going to cost you way more that you didn't budget for because they were there for 12, 16, 18 hours at a time. So a lot of times the scope of work is based on the value. Like, look, birth is unpredictable. I am paying you for the on-call time. I'm paying you to be responsible to call me back and be at the birth. I'm asking you to be there within 30 minutes. I am paying you whether you make it to the birth or you're there until the whole thing. I typically call you during transition. If it's a mom that's had a baby before, I'll try to call you a little sooner because I want to make sure the whole point of a birth assistant is second hands at delivery for newborn and maternal complications. So we have to look at the scope of work, whether you are the midwife hiring a 1099 or you are directly the independent contractor. You have to always think win-win situations. How can I add value to them where I am charging X amount of money, but I know they're going to make more money, they're going to get more value out of what I'm proposing? Or the scope of work rarely goes through. It processes, because if I'm going to charge them $1 million, but they're only going to make $100 on it in the end, they're never going to hire me. So you have to think like a business owner on both directions. So these are some key things found in an independent contract. It is the introduction of the two together, the purpose and mission of why we're putting together this scope of work proposal. For example, you have a busy midwifery practice and I'm a newer midwife in the area. I don't have as many clients. I am willing to be your backup for 24/7 for 6 days out of the month on the weekends. I will be able to support you for this relationship until you get some more staff on your team, or we grow more midwives in the community to support that backup coverage. a description of the service. What does that backup coverage look like? I will be on call for your ladies. I will be available for you only to call. And if you call me, I will always come and back you up. Or I have the option to say, I will always back you up unless there's a personal issue or my own lady is in labor. Like, you want to don't ever make assumptions, because I hear it over and over again. Details are so important on pieces of paper. Once you get emotions and then you're in the thick of it and a what if scenario happens, you can refer back to the scope of work you agreed to. And especially if it was a long time ago, maybe you have a long-term working relationship. Like, every year you should be reviewing that independent contract with that person and making sure you're still on the same page and meeting the needs of both people involved. So you want to say how long it's valid for. This proposal is good for 30 days, 14 days. It renews annually once we both look at it. What is the responsibility of both sides? If you're hiring me, this is the services I'm going to do, and in exchange for those services, you're paying me X amount, you're trading me X amount, you're giving me some form of value. What is happening on both sides of that relationship for that scope of work service? The payment plans, I am going to invoice you monthly, I'm going to invoice you daily, weekly. You have to pay within 48 hours, 7 days, the contract's voided. Like, you have to put very details. How can you separate from each other? How much time do you have to give? You have to give 2 weeks notice, 60 days notice, 6 months notice, because some things, if you're backing and you're say, hey, I'm growing a busy practice and I want you to be 1099 and another midwife on my team, and all of a sudden she wants to open her own practice, it gets really dicey. You're planning 9 months in advance to have 2 people there. It takes you time to find another partner to join your team as a midwife. You got to get them credentialed, licensed, recruited. You need 45 to 90 days minimum if you're doing those type of scope of work proposals, because you have to think of, if that person separates from you, how long is it going to take you to replace, and how valuable are they for the business structure and day-to-day operations. If there's discrepancies, there's disputes, there's breach of contracts, how is that going to get resolved? A lot of times you'll look at an arbitration committee in the local area. Sometimes you take legal action. Legal action gets expensive and it tends to not get you anywhere for financial. It just drags things on. So if you can really say, okay, even if it's a simple thing of like, we didn't put this in our contract and now we're discussing it and we're not on the same page, you could have a third midwife in the area that you guys both trust and respect, and she could be that neutral person to hear both sides of the situation, and you'll respect whatever decision she makes. Like, that could be as simple as how you're going to solve your problem. So don't overcomplicate it. Make sure you're following the laws in your local area, state, federal, when you're putting these contracts together, because there could be certain things you can't say in a 1099. I'm telling you, you have to be here Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, and these are exactly the things I need you to do, and I'm going to train you. The more you treat them like an employee, you give them benefits, you provide the supplies, you tell them and micromanage when they have to be there, that makes the business vulnerable, that 1099 can come back to you later and say, well, she treated me like a W-2. She owes my taxes. She owes part of the split to the federal government for the tax component. It can get really dicey if you're starting to hire people as independent contractors, but you're treating them like W-2. So independent contractor tax benefits. These are things to think about. Your income is not directly coming under you, it's coming under your business, it's coming under the entity you set up. You pay yourself from the business. The point of being an independent contractor setting up a business is keeping them separate as much as possible and protecting yourself from the scope of work. You want to protect your personal assets, short-term and long-term, from the services and the products and the things you're doing for other people. So the more that you can treat yourself like a mini business, even if it's just you and it's here and there, if you're making a few $1,000s from this independent contract work, I really encourage you to take the next levels and set up an LLC, set up some business structure, have separate bank accounts, have a credit card, a checking account, business transactions in that business, and then personal transactions in the personal. And then when you just need to pay yourself, whatever you choose, you pay yourself weekly, you pay yourself monthly, you pay yourself every few months. You just have to pull those funds from the business to the personal and note them as earned income to you. So as of 2020, there is very firm guidelines of independent contractors and what you have to do. You have to send everybody that's made over $600 with your own company a 1099. So if you hire a bunch of birth assistants, you hire a midwife, you have independent contractors, people that are working under their own name, people that are working as sole proprietorship, LLC, you need to get that process to them. S corporations, C corporations, actual corporate structures are different. You don't have to send, and so that's why you always ask to do a W-9 verification with them. It's a form to just show how are they structured with the government. Anytime you're doing a working relationship with someone, you want to get some of these forms. And this is part of having a consultant. This is part of having a business mentor. It's not just taking care of people. Midwives and birth workers are not trained in this business aspect of legal compliance that's so important. The last thing you want is to be audited by the government because you didn't account for some money, and then you've got to pay taxes and fees, and then you're not doing things right, and there's fines. Like, just do things right, follow the rules, get your accountant involved, have them support you. The person that does your payroll, the person that does your bookkeeping, have them on your team to help you out. I don't expect you to memorize the hundreds and hundreds of codes and things out there, but I do expect you to leverage the experts around you that are the ones that live and breathe this with their job. The IRS requires all independent contractors to pay a self-employment tax if they make at least $400 a year. And so this is part of working with your accountant in your tax structure. When you're making earned income from the sole proprietor and LLC, you have to complete a Form 1040. It's typically for a single member LLC and a sole proprietorship, you would just complete that within your own personal tax forms. But if you're a C corporation, you're an S corporation, you'll have separate tax filing forms, but you're also not an independent contractor anymore. So contractors will use Schedule C on their personal income taxes to show the income, expenses, and losses for their little mini business, their little mini independent contract work. So whatever equipment, your home office, your computer, your trainings that you did to be able to do these scopes of work should be written off of that earned income. So as of 2021, self-employment tax was currently at 15.3%. And so it gets expensive. I mean, this is why you're getting paid more than someone that's W-2. You pay more taxes on your own because part of the employer would have paid those taxes for you if you worked for them as a W-2, an employee within their practice. You're responsible for all of them. You're responsible for all your taxes, all your benefits, all your Social Security, Medicare, and you have to account for that in your numbers when you're doing your scope of work proposals for people. So these are common deductions. We have a whole section on more details, but I want you to just think high level. So anything you're doing, you're traveling, your car, you choose mileage, any liability insurances, anything you need, licensures, certifications, trainings, equipment, anything you need to have and you can defend of why it was purchased to do your job as a scope of work, are deductions off. So you want to take as much as possible off your income before taxes on these expenses so that you're paying just on the true money that was actually went into your pocket and you could use for day-to-day living. So 6 tips for being a successful independent contractor. You want to determine your business legal structure. It's okay if you want to just be representing yourself, a sole proprietorship under your Social Security number. You can be a limited liability company. There's pros and cons to both of them. But once you start making at least $40,000, I do encourage people to switch over to an S corporation for tax savings and different legal structures. Once you become an S corporation, you're not an independent contractor within your service line anymore. You're representing your proposal based on the company and the team and not so much yourself anymore. So think of those different structures that are out there. Every state is different. There's PLLCs, there's L3Cs, there's there's 1,000 different ones. So you have to know the different state you're part of. We give some examples of what and even just the boards of review and the defense and where you're represented, and specifically independent contractors have a certain accountability and standards they have to hold. And so just do a lot of research, meet with local representatives, talk to lawyers, make sure you're setting up everything to legally protect yourself. Because I've talked to too many midwives over the years that have gotten burned because they just didn't know what they didn't know. And then they're in legal court system and they paid someone as an independent contractor but treated them as a W-2, and now they owe hundreds of thousands of dollars in fines and fees and retribution, or they were not taking in accounting for all the earned income. They weren't separating the business and the personal assets, and then they got audited by the IRS. They weren't keeping receipts. So then they couldn't defend themselves for their business write-offs, and then you have to owe a bunch of taxes and fines for back income you didn't rationalize. So it's really important to make sure you have the right structure for you and you're running your business how you should. Create a plan of how you're going to be doing these scope of work. Why are you going to do scope of work? What is your vision? What is your goal? You're a mini business on whatever level you want to call it. And so represent yourself that way. Get a company name, get a logo, getting branding, get a business card, get official proposal contract templates ready based on various things you want to offer as service lines. Have people on your team, just like a little business, whether you have a big corporation or something small, habits of having bookkeepers and QuickBooks and income and expense tracking and saving your receipts and invoicing under your company, and act like a business when you're planning and you're implementing these scope of work proposals as independent contractors. So assess your internal elements within your company. Is it just going to be you? Are you going to have a team? What equipment do you need? Is it going to be financially stable long term for what you want to do? Is it a side hustle that's just a hobby and retirement? What is the purpose of this company, and why are you contracting? Is it just a one-time thing to do somebody a favor? Is it going to be a regular business and you have a website and you advertise it to the public? Like, what is the purpose? And then what different insurances you need. Do you need malpractice? Do you need business? Do you need building insurance? Like, what do you need for the products or services that you're offering within your proposals? Build a marketing strategy. If you're going to be simple and small, that's okay, but know your ideal client. How do you attract them? How do you find them? If you're going to be a large scale operation and want to grow and big scale, and this is just the first stage, you have to have a different marketing strategy. So you really have to meet with a great marketer, make a plan, start getting yourself out there in whatever level and capacity makes sense for your ideal clients that you're serving and who it's for. Because if your scope of work proposal is just to back up a midwife in the area or do birth assistance just for this midwife exclusively, you're not going to really need a marketing strategy per se to the public, but you will still have to market your value to that direct midwife of why you're a good candidate to back them up for call, why you're a good candidate to be a birth assistant. You still have to market yourself of the skills you have, the knowledge, the reliability, the accountability, the value you're bringing. So whatever level that is, you still have to have a marketing. So think about the insurances you need. You need car insurance if you're driving around. You need disability insurance if you slip and fall. You need professional protection. You need business insurance, building, accident, errors and omissions. Whatever scope of work you're doing, you want to make sure you have insurance to cover those levels of protection. So there's different industry associations out there you can join. There's for like Midwifery Works with midwives in business, and there's the AABC Institute with the birth centers and their business structures. You can look at the Chamber of Commerce in your area. There's a lot of business networking groups out there. You want to join. If there's independent contractors doing similar things to you and there's already an industry you can join and leverage to grow where you want to grow, it just depends on what type of independent contractor you want to be. So for example, when I do my nurse midwife locum assignments, I am associated with 5 different travel agencies. I am associated and leverage my 1099 scope of work proposals representing through them. I just talked to wonderful company Baby Academy and considering doing some childbirth education services with their company. I'd be a 1099. They tell me the terms and the minimum and the max of what I have to commit to, what the scope of work looks like, and I can choose to accept the scope of work as an independent contractor that they're offering with their company. And so it goes many different ways. So it's just a different way of structuring yourself. You either are W-2 or you're an independent contractor or you're representing your service line as a company entity to people. So these are just overall summaries to think about. So independent contracting can be a very rewarding way to live if you want your own vacation time, you want to have your own days off, you want to decide when you're working and not working. Do you want to get paid hourly? Do you want to get paid based on value and products and resources you create for people? It gives you a lot more autonomy, but it also gives you a lot more responsibility. Some people are not good independent contractors. They've worked for the system for so long, they need a boss. They need someone to tell them they have to be there from 8 to 5 days a week, or they're not going to get anything done. They're not going to take the initiative and the drive and reach out and find people and negotiate win-win situations and figure out their value and add skills. They're going to expect their business to require them to do that they work for. So you definitely just have to think about what you want to be, what you want to hire within your company, the pros and cons of W-2 employees versus 1099. But you're self-employed. You get the benefits, all the tax write-offs. You also have to do your own taxes and benefits. You have to buy your own equipment and supplies. You have just a little more in the backdrops to do than someone that works for another person, but you typically make more money and you can grow and expand to unlimited opportunities versus W-2 is just kind of, this is the pay cap, this is the salary, this is the evaluation. Once a year you get a raise, you may get a bonus here and there, but when you're W-2, you can shift gears and pivot and double your proposal next time and add extra things and skills that you just can't do working for somebody else.